Welcome to another RPG in a Box basics tutorial. In this video, we're going to discuss how to start a game. So you've just created a new project. You've either, created a bare bones project like I've got here, or you've started from scratch and you've built some assets like tiles and some characters. And now you want to play your game and you want to know how that works. So that's what this video is going to do. It's going to quickly show you how to start a game and talk about something that you need to be aware of when you do this. Something you may not realize when you're starting out as a beginner to RPG in a Box. So I've just created a character here, or actually I haven't. I've used the asset library to import it, but let's say you've created a character and you want to just play test the game, make sure it's all working. So you want to run around this sort of empty map that we've made here. Now the misconception, if you're new to game design or you're coming from other editors, the misconception is that you now need to sort of place a player start down. So for example, you might think that placing this character, and let's just delete this for a moment. If I click my player character model and I place it down here, that's going to be where I start. That's actually not the case, okay? And what you'll find if you then play the game is you'll have two instances of your player character. One will be the one you control, and one will be a uncontrollable version, which is essentially an NPC. Because what we've actually done here is we've placed a non-player character version of your model. So this is in essence going to be a NPC. It's not going to be where the player starts. So how do you define where the player starts in an RPG in a Box game, and what's the steps for creating that? So it's actually done in the game configuration section. So if you double click this, there'll be a section here where you've obviously got the title of your game. You'll also define your model for your player. So in this case, base_Justin. But this is the important bit, the startup script. This is what defines where the player starts, okay? Now you can call your script anything you want. Typically, most people call it startup just because it makes sense. It just constantly reminds you that that's your script. That is the first thing that your game does. But you can name your script anything you want. The most important thing, however, is that you set it in this section of the editor here, in the startup script section. So just to show you this, what we'll do is we will delete the startup script that we have here, and we'll make a new one. So we'll click the new script button, and we can call this anything we want. So let's just call this initialization. Okay, it can be called literally anything. So we'll just type initialization just so that it lets us know that this is the first thing that happens. Now, when you create a script, I should also point out that if you're creating a project that's got a template with it, so like the bare bones project or the default example game project, then you already have characters and tiles, and you'll also have a startup script. So you can just use that. But if you want a bit more control, or if you've created a completely blank project, then obviously you'll need to make this script. So it's very rare that you will have to make a startup script. I'm only doing it just to show you that you can literally start from scratch. So I've deleted my startup script and I've created a new one, and I've called it something different because it doesn't have to be called startup. So I've called it initialization. Now, when you make a script from scratch, you'll always have a display message in it by default. Now, we don't want display message in this case. We want to start our map so that we can walk around it. So we're going to delete this by clicking the cross. And instead, we're going to go into the available functions section here, and we're going to type load, and we're going to look for the one that says load map. And we're going to click and drag that into the Visual Script editor, and it should automatically connect up. If this hasn't, for whatever reason, automatically connected up, because it is possible to turn that ability off, but it should be on by default. But if for whatever reason it's come in and it's not linked up, you can just click on the blue dot on the start node, and then when you've clicked, you can drag it to the yellow node, and that will link them up. And you'll know it's connected because in the code, text code below, you should see the same code as the one you've dragged in, but in text form. Okay, so this node, this load map node, is what tells the game not only what map to start on, but where on the map you should start. So the first thing we have is what's the map that we want to first load when we start a game. Well, I've only got one, so the overworld map is the one we'll leave in there. But the player position, this is how you define where this character, which is our player character, is going to start. So what are these three boxes here, and what are the numbers that go into them? This is the grid coordinates of the tile that this player character is going to be placed in when you click New Game. So if we go to our map, we need to pick somewhere on this map where we want the player to start. So each of these tiles is like a grid. You see the grid here. We've got these grey lines going down and also across, and they sort of chop the playable space into these black squares, which are then obviously filled by whatever tiles you make. Well, each of these black squares has a coordinate. So if we hover over, if you hover the mouse, you can see in the bottom right corner here, if I move my mouse across, you can see that the numbers are changing, okay? And those numbers are the number that we're going to put into our load map node. So -4, -40, for example, is this tile here. So if we wanted the player to start there, that's the numbers that we would use. So let's say we want the player to start right in the center, around about here. Well, if we look at the coordinates, now we've clicked it, we can see the coordinates are -1, -1, 0. Now you could remember that and type it in manually, or what you can do is right-click on the tile once you've selected it, and you can scroll down to copy X, Y, Z coordinate. If you click that, now go back to the script editor, you can now click this icon here, the paste coordinate button, and that will put those coordinates in. Now, when we play the game, this coordinate, this tile here, is going to be where our character starts. So you don't place the character down yourself, you just specify the tile coordinate in the script for where that player should start. You can then specify a direction if you want them specifically to face north, south, east, or west when they spawn in. No change would typically be used when you're loading another map, not your starting map, but when you're, let's say you're walking from a forest map into a village map and you want the transition, you specify no change, means that if you're facing west when if you're walking forwards, for example, and you transition up the screen into the forest, you still want to be facing north, then just say no change and the player will still be facing whichever direction they were facing when they transition. Otherwise, if you specify direction, it will overwrite that and force the player to face a particular direction in the second map, if that makes sense. So let's save this script now that we've set up our load map node, and we then go to the game configuration section, and in the startup script, we will set initialization. And now when we start our game, the first thing it's going to do is run this script, and this script is going to load the map, and put the player that we've set as the player character. Again, that's done here. So you set the model that you want as the player character, and it's going to put that character at that coordinates facing that direction, and then give you the ability to control them. So let's save everything and play the game. So if we now click New Game, here we are in the game, and it's put our player character at this position, and we can now use the WASD keys to move, or click the mouse to move around. Okay, so that's how to get a game going and how to play test your game once you've set up some assets.